Hi, everyone, and welcome back to our second episode of NuAunts. I'm Kelly,
I'm Letty.
And I'm Kate.
and we are NuAunts. We are sharing our experiences at our certain age um, of being women who are aunts, who are moms, who are friends, who are guides, who are sometimes therapists, sometimes protectors, all things comforting and family. We are friends since we are, 14, 15 years old, staying connected in this wild and crazy world. We are very thankful to the Brides March platform for allowing us a space and to share our thoughts and feelings about various aspects of what's going on in the world, specifically around um, domestic violence and within our communities and sharing different ways that we can help support each other as best we can, bringing awareness to certain things that are happening now and things that have happened that impact us all. And so tonight we are joined by the wonderful Emily Barada. Letty will be introducing her a little bit later. But I just wanted to start us off on just recapping a little bit about what we discussed in our last episode. We kicked off talking about marriage and where we encounter love and how much that means to us in our lives, as a part or foundation of womanhood. And one day we're going to grow up and we're going to get married, and how believing in that dream for some of us puts us at this dangerous intersection of encountering violence or allowing violence within our lives. Different ways that we can confront that belief to help us become more knowledgeable and careful and protective around ourselves and other women within our community, to help limit that violence and get justice for ourselves and each other. And so this week we are talking about that same love, but towards our communities. Our first community was within our home, and for some of us that can be our greater family networks, and sometimes our communities, and it can be even on an international level for some that they are so rooted in a foundation of wanting to help movements, each other, different communities. We are going to highlight Dolores Huerta, who is a co-founder of the United Farm Workers Union, and the recent information that she shared about experiencing violence at the hands of Cesar Chavez, and why she chose to hold on to that information well into her ninth decade of life, in her 90s, and why we feel sometimes that we have to hide or limit the information that we hold on to deny ourselves justice. Um, and ladies, do you have any ideas of why we might not share certain things like that with our immediate community and family?
I
Okay,
think
so some of the. Oh, I'm sorry, Kate. You were
no,
going to
no,
say.
no. It's an interesting conversation because I think sometimes it's because we don't feel comfortable, but sometimes we actually do share, and then we're
Mm-hmm,
not received well.
mm-hmm,
And so that's happened to me. Trying to get help from my mom or various people. And I think also the perception is, from the outside, the perception of a relationship is obviously very different. It's only those two people who really know the details of what's going on, and those perspectives can be very conflicting. But I never thought of myself necessarily as someone who would end up in a relationship where there would be any great degree of abuse. And so I think it's also a little bit of a having to get past the ideas about yourself and what you maybe perceive you've allowed to happen. I think there's a shame component there.
mm-hmm,
And then
mm-hmm,
when no one from the outside is calling it out, you just feel like, how much of this is my fault? There's all these conversations you're having with yourself where you're denying yourself the truth. Um, and I was, sharing with you guys that I actually was in a long-term relationship where someone threatened me, actually threatened me with a firearm. And it actually took me a bit of time to even realize that I was being threatened, because I initially thought that the threat was about him hurting himself, which had been used, I think, as a coercive measure in other aspects of the relationship. And it took me a while to realize, no, I firmly believe he was actually threatening me, but the perception of our relationship from the outside was pretty positive. I was getting a lot of positive feedback about him at the time. And I think, I honestly think the number one thing is just to look at yourself and how you feel and how you're behaving. And if you're not happy with who you are, you have to take a step back, whatever that looks like. Can't rely on other people to tell you.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you for joining us again. If you're just hopping on, this is our second episode of NuAunts. We're kind of like aunties, like we're new aunties because we're like on the younger end of the auntie spectrum. And we bring in guests too. Thank you both, my sisters, for letting me kind of share some of the guests from the Brides March movement on some of our first episodes. And this kind of collaboration between NuAunts and Brides March, where we're three women. We identify as women, all three of us, and there is a particular experience that we share in common in how we have dated in our lives, how we've hidden the things that we've gone through, even from each other sometimes until after the fact, right? Because as Kelly mentioned, we've known each other since we were in high school, since we were 14. And I know sometimes Kelly and I were pretty close. Like I consider you a very close sister, friend. But I wouldn't tell you sometimes about what I was going through in a relationship until after that relationship was over. And I needed someone to remind me of who I am and to remind me to release some of that shame that we're talking about. So it has been through sisterhood and courageous women that have shown me how to speak up or how to demand to maintain myself, capital S, like you're saying, Kate, like.
Well, I think, it's interesting you say hidden, because I think, what do we hide, right? We do hide the things that we're either ashamed of or uncertain of. And so for me, I hope that's a theme that we continue to explore, because how are you going to get different perspectives, or how are you going to get help, or how are you going to trust yourself if you allow that shame to be the first thing in your mind?
And shame, I do think, is a tool of abusive people to convince you, like, oh, you liked that, what I did to you, 14-year-old and I'm 40,
Right,
8-year-old and I'm 30. Like,
at
how
the
am I
societal
supposed to,
level
you're
too, right?
making my body go against something I didn't even realize was part of my anatomy. You're making me feel those things. And then I have to feel ashamed to tell my mom that happened when I wasn't even ready for that. But you're completely mature and aware of what you're doing to me. So I think perpetrators and abusive people and violators should be ashamed, but they are not at all.
At all.
But we're ashamed that they did that to us and that we experienced those things. So speaking to why the shame, to your question, Kelly, it's like ignorance, innocence, the real battle between good and evil out here, that some people are really manipulative and they have tried the same process on many, many people over time. And it's just a way of their behavior.
Perfected it. Yeah.
And our society does not litigate properly or denounce that enough because of shame. I know a lot of people that say, none of my sisters have been abused. Nobody better bring that to my family because, we'll beat them up. And it's like, you're better than others because you would also enact violence on someone, right? Like, so we all have to become violent in order to, right, not fall into this trap of shame of having fallen into abuse, right? And so it's a complicated, nuanced topic, isn't it?
Absolutely, it is. Like other reasons for what you said is understanding that there are so many people out there who just actually refuse to, because I can't believe that people don't believe that people are harmed in intimate partner violence situations, domestic violence. I don't believe that they think that. I think it's just easier for them, especially if they're not directly experiencing it, to be dismissive of it, or for it to rock the boat. Even within a household, if you find out that a head of household is violating someone in that household, the removal of that person disrupts everyone financially, where they're living, their whole way of life may be disrupted. So violence is allowed to continue. You may have a situation like with Dolores where she is scared that one, she's not going to be believed, and then will this be disruptive to a movement that was the first union that people had for farm workers, that allowed labor standards to be enacted. All of these changes that were made that people still benefit from today were in jeopardy if she spoke up to get justice for herself, which she deserved. But like society at large, we don't deserve we don't deserve the benefit of the doubt to risk those things. And she had to make the call to say, what would I be risking? And so from the everyday person to say, am I risking the roof over my head, to am I risking the rights of hundreds of thousands of people and potentially millions in the future to be thrown off the track of gaining so many advantages and rights that they should have. Unfortunately, here where we happen to be, you have to fight for a lot of the things that we should have. All of that can be, derailed. And I think a lot of abusers know this, which is where a lot of the power in what they're doing lies. Because the first thing is enacting power over a person that you believe, you can do that to. That's part of the why they're even doing it in the first
And
place.
I
So,
love, I think one of you said earlier, it can happen in a relationship, but it can happen in other like arrangements of hierarchy,
mhm,
like the
mhm,
workplace. Like people
right,
do a lot of things at work that
mhm,
they wouldn't normally do to a friend. They would do it to a
ever,
colleague to
mhm,
get close with the boss or something,
yes,
and it's like instead of calling out the behavior of the boss because of the risk that that takes or
exactly,
because of the threat,
mhm,
Kate just mentioned she was threatened before.
mhm,
People literally have to find a moment when someone's not home to pack their bags and leave and hide for years. Like
mhm,
these are hard, difficult things to do, to walk away from
Well, there's also
situations. So calling things
depending.
out, it's not as easy as people would think for sure.
Yeah, and I think
absolutely,
depending on the situation, there's a he said, she said component too, right?
mhm,
So, how difficult it is to legally or otherwise extract yourself if it's
mhm,
just your word against someone else's word. I think that's a
mhm,
very real thing as well. And
absolutely,
I think with children, one of the things I've done a fair bit of reading, unfortunately, on childhood sexual abuse. And, one of the things is a lot of the times a tactic that a predator will use is to be very friendly with a number of children, but only abuse one. And that way, nobody would ever
mhm,
believe that about Mr. So and
plausible
so or whatever, because
deniability,
he's such a
So
great guy or
strategic
he,
and
oh my
premeditated. It's just
right, right. But I
overwhelming
mean, this
sometimes.
is how do you go about anything that you
right,
want, right? You think about it and you
right.
make a plan and you execute it. And it's very, yeah,
Right.
very
And it's not
intentional.
to say that progress hasn't been made, right? So we just all lived through the Me Too movement and the rebound from that to a certain extent, because here we are with the most hyper visible people in the universe, heads of state, princes, all different kinds of people who are not being held accountable with, you know, unimpeachable facts, videos, reports, things like that, and there's still no accountability and no justice being had for the victims. And so we're like, for all the progress we've made, have we really? Because of the same games are enacted, the same manipulative strategies are employed, and the same types of people, namely, feminine women, are uh, in a situation where, okay, I spoke up and now what?
Hmm.
So
And
totally
where is
understand
the
what
safe space?
I'm sorry,
Even identifying where is the safe space, right?
that part,
And for
Because
because
not
me, for
every
sometimes,
me that
medical provider, not every law enforcement officer, not every, is a safe space.
absolutely,
And
absolutely.
for me, it's always been, and this is something I share a lot when I have the platform in the Brides March of what do we do? How do we help? Right? Like if your friend comes to you and talks to you about a relationship that they have,
Mm-hmm,
just an ear, a safe place to let you know I'm still in this 10 years later, but it's still these things are happening. But I know I can turn to you. And one day
mm-hmm,
when I am ready, I know I
mm-hmm,
can turn to someone.
mm-hmm,
Um, it's very highly important. It's been strong women that will, I know women that are on call voluntarily, including our next guest, I know does work like
Mhm.
this, to to show up to hospitals and places when people have denounced, and so that the hospital doesn't just treat them like they're processing a body as they're like
Mhm.
just been recently violated, but actually someone's there to hold them through the courage it takes to go through that and seek help, and it might
Mhm.
not turn into justice as we would believe it should be because of
Mhm.
all the things we're mentioning here. But
Mhm.
women, we do a lot in the world to demand justice, and women are just recently gaining a lot of educational rights, political rights, really in the last 40 years. And in the United States context, I mean, there are a lot of places where women can only go from their household and their parents' care to a husband's care at a very
Mhm.
young age to then care
Mhm.
for children. And that is like the trajectory of life of many
Yeah.
women around the world. Like, I think sometimes when we're born in the United States, us three, we've been very educationally privileged to attend, like the place that we went to high school together and things. And so I think we don't realize how far we've come as women, and the importance of this work of continuing to even stretch ourselves, right? We're
Mhm.
doing this podcast, like, because we're like, we want to be vulnerable and name some of what we've told each other in privacy for
Yeah.
years. And, we wish we'd maybe known however many decades ago, that we let people convince us that we needed to stand for things that our systems and our intuition sort of told us was wrong. But
Mhm.
because someone with more strategy and intention, put it on us, like we allowed certain things to happen that wasn't the course of our lives and didn't need to be
Right.
as women.
Right.
I know we're talking about Dolores. Just this isn't something that just happens to poor people in developing nations, let's say, that are in these setups. I mean, it happens to labor organizers that have a full platform and allies and organizers and activists around them
Mhm.
still to protect their children, to protect their allies, to protect a man who's a leader and has elements that are helping the world in some way, but still exhibit violence or abuse. I
Yeah.
think us not being able to hold that both of those can be true in one person is a challenge too.
Yes.
People are
Mhm.
nuanced as well.
Absolutely,
Um,
they
but
are.
I know, Kelly, we were going to bring up another case as well of another
Yeah.
high profile,
Yes.
person that.
The vice mayor of Coral Springs, in
Mm,
Florida, Nancy Mateo Bowen. I'm not sure if I pronounced her middle name correctly, but she was her husband took her life, um, and she was a vice mayor. She's out here advocating for her community. She was a leader, and one would like to speculate because I do not know her. I do not know her situation. He did confess to the harm he caused her and cited her as the reason as to why she was harmed. It's a familiar refrain in these relationships, and one can only um, glean from that this may have been an ongoing violent relationship that culminated in this ultimate act. And again, another woman out there um,
with
ident-
access to resources, maybe even funding domestic violence programs, right? Maybe surrounded by folks, but
yes,
did she
yes,
feel safe to acknowledge
yes,
her? We don't know. We just
right.
don't know. We
The,
unfortunately will not be able to hear from her again, and I
absolutely,
just want to send our condolences to her loved ones, her
absolutely,
constituents, her friends, her family.
yes.
Acts like these of this level of violence, which the
Hmm.
Brides March focuses on, these types of losses,
Hmm.
um, completely change this timeline. It
Hmm.
changes the trajectory of that city.
Hmm.
People are traumatized for life behind
Hmm.
the loss of that young lady.
Hmm.
The sad truth is he may get 15 to 20 years. That's what I've seen in my decades of work in this. He will be released in a couple of decades and get to have his second chapter out here.
Right.
It's really important that we really think about what we want to, instead of blaming her as he did,
Hmm.
blamed her for his action that he couldn't
Hmm.
control of killing someone he was married to. It must
Hmm.
be her fault.
Hmm.
Um, we should really switch from victim blaming to really figuring out what actions we need to take to
Mm-hmm.
reject and denounce folks who would be causing harm to us and our children, boys and girls, in our society through this type of violence.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Um,
Let's
so I guess,
bring Emily on. Yes.
should we bring our next guest? So this next guest is a 2-decade long marcher in the Brides March. She has been with us on the ground, walking the pavement in her wedding gown with us at the Brides March for over 20 years. And I think the most special role she holds as one of 8 steering committee members who have just put up this event annually through grit and commitment is that she houses all the bridal gowns in her personal home, in her basement. We just actually, she can share more, but we just received a donation recently. Whenever a woman reaches out to us around the world to donate a dress to our movement, I forward that on over to Emily, who navigates all the stories and just builds relationships with women around the world for us with her care, that have created the culture of this movement. But beyond that, she's been an activist for years. I mentioned she does volunteer services inside and outside of the Brides March. And with that, I'll bring on Miss Emily Barada.
Hi. Hi, everybody.
Welcome to NuAunts.
Welcome.
How are you doing today on this Good Friday?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Thank you for being with us. So, Emily.
Yes.
I guess, would you share with us any thoughts on what you were hearing backstage, on anything you were thinking while we were chatting? I'm sure you have any number of thoughts on any of those
I was
things.
thinking there was no word for a man or a husband abusing his wife. There was no such thing as domestic violence. That word, that explanation, that description, that just didn't exist until not so long ago. It was a private matter. It was a family matter. You had, it could be your religion, your culture, all of those things against you. Back in the 50s and 60s, when I was growing up, this saying always was, what happens in the home stays in the home. So where would you go? And just the other day, I had an exterminator here, and he saw the gowns in the basement and asked me about them. And I told him about Gladys, and he said to me with a straight face, well, what did she do that made him do that? And my mouth just dropped. He said, what did you say? What could anyone ever do? And he tried to explain to me how there were 2 sides to a story.
Oh my God.
Then 2 days later, I was at the Salvation Army scouting out gowns, as always. The woman behind the counter had kind of broken English, and she asked me about the gowns. And I told her. Well, she told me, and she was young, probably in her 20s, she told me in no uncertain terms that she just did not understand that whole concept, because women weren't lower than men. There was no reason why you would be submissive. She knew that word. And as far as she was concerned, that would never happen to her because she was Latina, she said. I said, okay. So again, obviously the shame involved, I'm part of through Mount Sinai. It's called SAVI program, Sexual Assault and Violence Intervention Program, for over 25 years. And we're advocates that we're known as. We get about 50 hours of training. We're on call once or twice a month, however. And if someone comes in as a victim of either sexual assault or domestic violence, we go in and we're able to walk the person through it, offer her free counseling through us, make sure that she's treated well by the police and all the things that she needs to do. And as Letty mentioned before, so that, she's not left alone. But the one thing that I do often is when I go in, one of the first things I'll say is, I know that you love him. because I know everyone expects, oh, you must hate him. Look what he did to you. I want to acknowledge that for them. But I tell them, you need to love yourself more because you could lose your life. So you have to decide what it is that you want to do. Our mission also is to make sure that woman is safe, that she decides to stay in that relationship. What can we tell you and how can we help you? What tools can we give you that you can be safe while you stay? Because it's something like 6 or 7 times before a woman actually is able to leave.
7 attempts, right?
Temps, that's right.
So people sort of might leave and return. Is that what that means?
Well, I
Because I've
think
heard that too, and I
Well,
think it's a really
I
important.
think again, there are so many reasons, children, finance, and again, women like projects. They think that this man can be fixed,
Yeah.
you know, and when he's sorry and it's not going to happen again, and it was only because he was drunk, they let that kind of love that they think they have allow them to be, allow themselves. Betty Friedan, who wrote in the 60s Feminine Mystique and one of the co founders of Now, I mean, that was just a groundbreaking book for feminists. She was physically abused by a husband. She said that she hardly ever went on to a show or whatever without a black eye. It's everywhere, and people want to compartmentalize it. Oh, she was Spanish. Oh, she was poor. She was Muslim.
Because people are uncomfortable, right? And
Sure,
that's
they're
where
uncomfortable.
that comes from too, is like, what did she do? Because it's just
Yes,
such an
because you can
uncomfortable
say, I
thought.
wouldn't do
There
that.
has to be a
Therefore,
reason. There
that's
has to
right.
be
There
a
has to be a
reason.
reason.
Right. Yeah, I think that unfortunately then that shame gets perpetuated too, because you don't feel comfortable talking to people. The self-esteem goes down. It just becomes a vicious spiral.
And that terrible, because we train cops when they come in and we're very careful about what they say. And I had a doctor say to a woman, well, why didn't you leave? And you have to pull her shirt and bring her out of the room.
Yeah.
No, not why didn't she leave? Why is this man doing what he's doing?
Right.
So I think it's
Shifting.
acceptable for men to be violent, for women to always be the regulating entity
Absolutely.
in the
It's her
space. Like,
fault. You made
yeah.
me. You
hmm
made me.
Like there's not a lot of accountability for men to develop their social emotional states.
That's
Like
right.
we are always the responsible party to make sure everybody, like, we control the mood. The
That's
old
right.
saying, "Happy wife, happy life." Like
Mhm.
everything is her fault. Like it may seem as though that is a saying to say that, like, oh, I have to keep my wife happy because then everything will be great. But it's like, no, she controls all of the moods, including, the perpetrator, as in he is divorces himself from all liability. Like, if I'm mad, it's her fault. What did she do? Like the guy said,
Right.
what did she do?
What did she do?
Yeah,
And and I
Mhm.
will say to the women also, um, if you say he can't control his anger, well, does he hit his boss
Right.
or his brother or his best friend? Why is it you that are being singled out? How is it that it's only you and only your fault?
Right,
I think
right.
about that a lot too when cases happen and they say, mental health or, which it's a tough top. It's a nuanced conversation because something's off. It's not the
hmm
normal functioning way. But
hmm
but yeah, they're not so crazy that they also just lash out at everyone. So it
hmm
seems a little more intentional than a mental condition,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
I heard you say about, you grew up in the 50s and 60s as a young lady, and naming domestic, the word didn't even exist to be able to say, hey, I'm going through this thing that's a common issue. It's not my situation and it's not okay. Um, how within that environment that you grew up in did you become a sort of a conscious young woman? Like what activated you to understand that something was like off perhaps, and the things they were telling you were yours to be able to access was limited to what you actually get to
I
do as
was
a human
surrounded
woman.
by women. We lived upstairs, my mother, my sister, my father, and I, but downstairs, my father's three single aunts lived, their parents, of course. I went to an all girls Catholic school, and it was always feminine energy, always. And saw, the way the women were treated and what was expected or not expected. And that I didn't grow up with the idea of, well, I have to get married. And I was so shocked at my 10-year high school reunion that every single person was married except me and Pat Kopp. And Pat Kopp was gay. And everyone had children. And I was like, oh my God, in this squished period of time, this is what you all did. This seemed what you needed to do. And then the aspect of women's health and not having access to birth control. When I was a teenager, the condoms, there was no birth control pill, right? Condoms were in the drugstore behind the counter. So obviously, no one
Talk about shame.
Yes,
Right.
no one's going to ask for them. So there was no birth control either. So I saw that as, well, what's that about? Or God forbid, a young girl did get pregnant, she was sent away. It was the big send away.
And what did that normally mean? Like another family member in another town, or what did it mean when like they just were locked in the house and couldn't engage?
No,
in
they were
social
sent to
activity?
family members somewhere. I have a cousin who was sent. I didn't even know she had a baby until like maybe 10 years ago. And she's close to my age. It was the ultimate shame. There was a young woman who moved next door to me with her family who was about 15, and word went around she'd had a baby, and it was like, gossip. It was the most terrible thing, It was very hard. So I knew how tough it was for women. And with the medical aspect, Our Bodies Ourselves was this wonderful book that came out, put out by a group of women that went through everything having to do with health. And that was important to me. And I would spread the word about that
I
too.
think I had a copy of that when I was.
Oh, everybody
15.
should. It came out in
Yeah.
1969 before you were around. But yeah, so it was just natural. It was always about the women.
You know,
So
Emily, I'm from
while
a,
everyone, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm from a very small town, and there's two women in that town in their 80s who were very affected. One had her child taken away from her and never saw it again when she was a teenager, and never went on to marry or have children. And then another woman who's a pretty close family friend, she was sent somewhere, I think, to like a Catholic, a nun or some type of, and the story, I can't remember the details, and it's not my story to share anyway, but her child was taken away in quite a traumatic manner right after the birth. And she went on to have a lot of children, but doesn't speak with any of them now. And she's in her 80s. And then there's someone in my family by marriage who I found out when she was in her 60s, because her daughter, who'd been given up when the family was living overseas years and years ago, was adopted by a family in Britain, and reached out, wanted to contact the family when she was in her 40s. And I mean, this stuff is also just part of the trauma of womanhood and shame and having to hide
Absolutely.
things and grief.
Yes.
And you can't grieve it because it's a disenfranchised kind of grief, the way like a miscarriage is, or the death of a pet that someone might think is silly, or just something that you can't really share with people. And I think that just perpetuates, right? Because that pain, people want to carry that over. And so that can lead you to be in relationships that are not good for you. And because you're putting yourself down, right? You're not allowing
I'm
yourself
tarnished.
to feel.
So at least
Yeah.
he chose me. At least I have a partner, because now I'm
Right.
wifed up. Thank God.
Right. Because something's wrong with me. I'm, damaged now in some way. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
You mentioned, Emily, that your classmates were married at your high school, your first 10-year high school reunion. It makes me think about that boys are also thinking they should get married or find a wife too. And we were talking earlier about women having to be the regulator of men. Like, I have heard so many men tell me that they're looking for peace when they get home, right? Regardless of their actions.
Or are they looking to be waited on and have a meal in front of them? And I'd like to know their idea of what peace is.
Right.
It's usually in the context of like they're getting screamed at for actions that they've done, and somehow it's their partner's fault for not giving them peace when they get home.
Yeah.
It's a level of not wanting to be held accountable in the home. But I think it's also right, because you know this, Emily, that at the Brides March, we understand women alone aren't going to fix the femicide problem. Young boys are orphaned from losing mothers too.
Yeah.
That's a trauma that shows itself in a way. You know, we have
Mhm.
men that show up to march with us. We have fathers that have lost daughters, you know, and
Right.
most men won't kill their partner. It's a small minority of men that have that capacity. And so I
Right.
guess it seems to me that while women are looking to be chosen, men are sort of looking to find peace that they could also find for themselves in a way too.
Mhm.
What do you think about that? Oh, did we lose her? What do you ladies think?
Well,
I
Um,
don't.
for
I don't
sure.
mean to. I don't. I hate to say
No, go ahead.
anti-men, but I don't know that peace. Women these days are, we're all working hard. We have careers. We have to. Maybe we'd like to come home and have some peace too. I don't know about the
I
idea
wouldn't mind a
of,
nice warm meal
okay.
yeah.
made
It
by my
sounds like the
partner, lady at home.
old-fashioned sitcoms, the way that men and women were portrayed, and the wife as being a
Mhm,
nag and the old ball and
mhm,
chain. In this day and age, I don't know.
yeah.
Men don't
Um,
have to get married. Women don't anymore either. You
mhm,
don't need a man to have a child. You don't have to be in that kind of relationship. Men have it's like to me shooting fish in a barrel when it comes to online dating and things like that. He can have a child up until he's 90. He doesn't
mhm.
have a ticking clock. So, I don't know about this peace business.
Well, I just heard it last week. Someone was telling me, I'm on hiatus from pursuing any type of relationship because my last one resulted in me having to walk around with a restraining order in my on my person. So I was like, well, you know what? I'm gonna do some internal work to make
Mhm.
sure I'm a little bit more aware of self-aware and also being more informed in how I choose a partner, right? So like taking accountability and responsibility for my part and winding up
Mhm.
in um, any proximity to
Mhm.
that type of violence that I was encountering.
Mhm.
So an
Congrats.
older gentleman offered me some advice, trusted person. This is a good mentor to me. Just so next time you're in a relationship, I know you say you're not going to date anymore, but you know, men they just want the woman to be their peace. When he said it, I've had to catch my jaw from like hitting the floor so I didn't seem disrespectful. But I was like, he really just said that to me. Like it's a thing that meant this is a
But
week ago.
Kelly,
So
think what
hmm?
you would have thought of that 20 years ago. You would have been like dissecting it. What does that mean?
Why
What's
am I
the,
not
da
peaceful?
da 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 da. Instead of just saying
Thanks for
no,
the
thank
advice.
you, no
I'll
thanks. Yeah.
take it into
It's
consideration.
funny. I feel that maybe women, I know that people will say women do this too,
Hmm.
but one of Chris Rock's old routines was, when you're dating somebody, you're
Hmm.
not dating them, you're dating their representative.
That's right.
Yes.
That's
Yep.
right.
So to say to someone, how did you not know? Did you not see red flag? No,
Hmm.
because you were conned.
That's
Yes.
where I advocate for the long engagement, Emily.
There you go.
If
Me
you want the
too.
romantic proposal after 3 days,
There you
great.
go.
Say
It's
yes.
it's
2
being love
years.
bombed. Exactly. You
Yes,
know.
exactly. And then
It
learning
takes
how
a
to recognize
while.
those things. Yeah, it
Mhm.
does. And so my grandfather I saw a couple of weeks ago, he was like, I didn't tell him anything of what happened. I didn't want to stress him out. I was
Mhm.
handling it with the rest of my family. But he said something to me when he met this partner, like literally right before everything blew up.
Mhm.
He was like, you need to spend more time with him. We need to
Hmm.
spend more time with him. We'd already
Mhm.
been together 2 years or so. And I asked him, I said, Daddy, Granddaddy, what did you mean? And he goes, you need
Yeah.
to see how people handle the hard times. What
Yes.
do
True.
they lean on
Yes.
in the hard times? Like,
Right.
is it alcohol? Is it drugs? Is it,
Right.
what have you? And I think the what have you was violence. And so he didn't want to just come out and say that. My grandfather he will be 99 in August.
That's
So talking with him is like, watching a PBS series or whatever, like he's just so full of so much knowledge. And so
yeah.
hearing
Yeah.
him really this time, because I was actually trying to listen instead of validate what I wanted.
Right.
Right. And so I couldn't understand it before, where now it was like, dong, so clear because I had come out on the other side, by the grace of God, and very grateful that it ended the way it did, and that I was able to get closer with my dear sisters here in light of it. But, I just feel like a lot of times we need to investigate the things we hear, the sayings that are out there, the be his peace, the happy wife, happy life, all these different ways that people associate, like, it's the de facto thing, like everybody being married at the 10-year anniversary, like all these different things where you're saying, well, it's why? Just
I
even
do.
that simple why is it allows a space for some questions to be answered, whether through experience, whether a patient, curious person assists you with that. But I think it takes a person like you, Emily, to be that, outlier within that whole generation to say, why can't I choose something different? And then choosing something different, because I tell you that many moons ago, I went through an assault, and I decided to report it. I went to the hospital, I went to the police. And if I had had someone like you there as an advocate, or someone to talk to through that experience, because I did hear all those things you're saying, those very insensitive comments coming towards me from the quote unquote caregivers or first responders who were supposed to be taking care of me, but they weren't. They were processing me. And that's how I felt. Um, because it took so many years to be able to heal. And I don't know that I'm done with that, but like
Mhm.
what you do is so necessary to so many victims. And I misspoke earlier when I was saying, like, feminine women and things like that. Anybody can experience intimate partner violence.
Absolutely.
Anyone would feel the shame of being manipulated or backed into a corner or just preyed upon, and feeling
Mhm.
like, how did I not see this? And like, how did I get here? And then how do I get out? Like all of those questions. And so it takes people who see that, like, you're not alone. You are not the only one. There's plenty of these, unfortunately, so many people like
Fortunate.
that.
That's right.
Yeah, we have patterns that we can recognize. We have systems that we can go into. We have
That's
like
right.
strategies that we can employ
Mhm.
to be able to help, leave this or grow through it, or heal from it. So, thank you so much for that, and like in showing us that it's still unfortunately, again, still necessary for this work to continue in that way.
I
Just
think
showing.
it always will be, because
Mhm.
people, they watch TV, they see special victims, and they think that for a while now, I think special victims was working 9 to 5. That was a big help. But I have noticed that the police are different, and I was very impressed
Mhm.
with. There was a man and a woman, and it was a sexual assault case, and the male cop said to me, would you ask her if she would prefer to just speak to my
Mhm.
partner? I was very impressed.
Mm. Okay. Well, that's
Those are
heartening to
the
hear
small
that.
things.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Letty.
Those are the small things. Like it's humanity. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
how would you feel if you just had a horrific experience 20 minutes ago and arrived here? Like, hand you a clipboard and a document and a pen, or would you like a shoulder tap and a cup of water too? Like, I think it's not rocket science, but our systems are very bureaucratic and designed to not be humanistic, and that
Mm-hmm.
is what sustains the violence in our homes and in
Yeah,
our
and it helps the people who are taking the information keep emotionally, distant from it. And there are times that I have known that the woman was not really sexually assaulted, but it's not my job to judge. I believe what you tell me, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and it's okay, because I've had teenagers come in sometimes where their parents have maybe caught them or whatever. But it's okay. I believe what you're telling me because that's what I'm supposed to do.
Can I ask Emily, but between reading the book, what was it called? About the
Fem-
body,
Feminine Mystique.
Feminine Mystique.
feminine. The one that you said you read, is that the
Oh,
one,
our
Kate?
bodies ourselves.
Oh, our
That
bodies
one.
are so that's all about women's health.
How did we go from reading books and sharing a little bit about women's health to being a key organizer of the Brides March and a member of Savvy? Like, when did you decide, or what brought you into this particular um, facet of gender equality? Women supportive
As I said, I've always
work.
been supportive of women, and it was. I had mentioned to you previously that when it came to the Brides March, what really pushed me was if a woman, a wealthy white woman like Nicole Brown Simpson, could be killed, what chance did the average woman ever have to be able to survive? She just couldn't. And the best that we can offer is a piece of paper, that means
Restraining order. You're good. All right, go home.
hmm
Be safe.
And as there's a stalking wasn't even considered a crime.
Right.
A woman would be stalked. She could lose her job because he stalked her at the office. At least now in New York, I mean, that's changed. That you can't lose your job, and stalking is an actual. You don't have to be killed in order for them to, you know, to issue an arrest.
So, what do you think those changes have made space for in the movement? The fact of having a name like domestic violence, having a
The
consequence
fact that
for
women have gotten
stalking.
more power. We've
Mhm.
gotten more education. We've gotten more education. It's expected that a woman is going to have a college education. When I was growing up, that wasn't expected. You took a secretarial course until you got married. So it's more
I think there's actually
education.
more women than men right now who are getting college educations.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we've got more power. It's always
Mhm.
about the power. It's all of the men that are preying on women. They're all powerful men. It's all about the control and the more power we get, the more visibility, the more we expand in numbers. That's what's going to make the difference.
Mhm.
Won't be a lone voice, calling in the wilderness anymore.
Mhm.
I
Whoa.
once, my ex husband was a cop, and one time I was with him and a few other cops, and one of them was complaining about didn't appreciate women on the police force. So he said, "Yeah," he said, "No, they lowered the standards now, for height." I said, "Oh, they didn't lower the standards for height," and he was Hispanic. For women, I said, "They lowered them for you." What are you talking about? I said, Hispanic men tend to be shorter. That's why they did it. And nothing, and it's true. It wasn't because of women. And I don't even want to tell you how they refer to women and short people because it's too vulgar.
Mm.
Do you know, Emily, I've actually been stalked twice in my life.
Oh my God.
And it wasn't by men that I had any interest in, that I flirted with, nothing. One was when I was at Duke undergrad. He was in the divinity school and stalked me. And he would be
Oh my
standing
God.
like under a tree outside my window as I was like typing my papers late at night. It was so creepy. And the other one was this guy in San Antonio, where I was working briefly driving horse-drawn carriages years ago. And I actually changed my name from my real name on all my social media and stuff. And I debated when I was in veterinary school about even having my name, about asking the school to not list me in the official lists.
How did you find out that you were being stalked? You just kept seeing him popping up?
The divinity student, yes. And I don't remember exactly what happened there, but he finally left me alone. But I didn't have the wherewithal to like report it, which sounds
what would you
odd, but
report?
like,
Yeah, what would you report back then?
right. And then, right, because he's a student as well, right? So he's on campus. And the other one, it was someone I had met doing animal rescue work. So he knew my name and had my cell phone number, and he would text me and say how beautiful I looked, and I'd be just somewhere random, and he'd be telling me what I was wearing. And I met the guy.
That's what happens when you're so gorgeous. Oh, whoops. I think I just blamed you. I think I just blamed your beauty.
Thank you for victim blaming.
Now, what were you wearing?
Right.
Why were you studying that hard
What
late
was I
at night?
wearing? Nothing good.
Yeah, that's how he is. What was she wearing?
Mhm.
Somebody had said that. I mean, some guy had said that. What was she wearing? That's why I said, well, if that's the case, then how come babies are raped? How come
Right.
the elderly are raped? If you're going to tell
Right.
me
Mhm.
what were they
Because it's about
wearing?
dominance, right?
Mhm.
Please. I
That's
Dominance.
know.
kind of
Yeah.
a good reminder about Denim Day, which I saw you at, Emily, last year,
Yes, we
which is this month.
Savvy's going to do something. I don't know, the tabling, and I think there might be some kind of rally too.
Do you know the history behind that Denim Day in April? A little bit, or
I
what it
do. Do I?
symbolizes? Yeah.
Yes. I don't know the exact date, if it was 1999 or not, but there was a teenager who took a driving lesson, and the driving in Italy, the driving instructor raped her, and he was convicted. And on appeal, the judge ruled that her jeans that she was wearing that day were so tight, she would have had to have helped him remove them. And in protest, all of the women in Parliament protested on the steps of Parliament. And from that time on, it's referred to as Denim Day. It's either sometimes they say it's April 29th, sometimes it's April 19th. So I have all of these buttons that, and some of it, one of them is even in ASL about there is no excuse to rape. So we table savvy tables sometimes, and then there's, like I said, there's a rally. But yeah, but that's
So
the story of
Can I
Denim.
ask
if we have skinny
a question?
jeans around the house, I'll remind y'all
So
when it's
everybody
Denim
wears
Day, so
denim
we
that
can.
yeah, everybody wears denim that day.
I'm curious, Emily, do you think that there's any, um, I try to think back to like when I was in my early 20s, right? And you're trying to figure things out, and you're obviously using your parents and siblings and different people and TV and culture, whatever, as role models. And there's this whole like pull between, okay, listen to other voices, right? Like assimilate information. People have wisdom, and then also trust yourself, like trust your own, because we've all gotten bad advice, right, from people that we thought
Sure.
were wiser than we were at different ages, and maybe we're coming from places of their own trauma, or just like kind of pushing us off a little bit and we didn't realize it and just saying whatever came to mind. Do you think that there really is any narrative that is helpful for someone at that age to be thinking about this type of stuff? Is it just that simple, where if something happens, just leave? Or is anyone going to listen to that? How do you
Are you
communicate with
talking
someone
about
who
in
doesn't
an
have the
abusive
life
relationship?
experience? Hmm?
Are you talking?
A single 20 something or late teen young person,
Right,
lady,
who's
man,
experiencing,
even.
having some questions about their relationship? Like, what can we really tell them that, because you want to give advice, but then people have to learn their own lessons too, right?
Mhm.
How do we pass on any wisdom, really?
It's children are being raised so differently these days, and there's so many things on like Instagram and all about boomer parents, comedic things. Boomer parents talking to their children who are raising their children, their grandchildren, just so differently. We're empowering young women so differently now. That whole idea about you don't have to be hugged. Hug
Yes.
grandma. You don't have to be hugged. You don't have to be
Yes.
touched.
You don't have to smile.
Right.
Yes. So that plays, I think, such a big part in it.
Yeah.
My stepdaughter, who is now in her 50s, but I've been with her since she's 6 or 7. She's gone through many careers, but her latest career is now a counselor, and she credits me with that for mostly working, and she mostly works with women. And the way that she raised my grandchildren, who were like 21 and 17, so differently. And I think that'll make the difference.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
It's very tough because, like, I've known about domestic violence since I experienced this tragic situation in my life many moons ago. And I still have challenges setting boundaries with people that I meet, appreciating the loyalty and the presence of a person, but like being pressed about the limitations that I feel because of the sacrifices I have to make. And, like, okay, they're open minded on this level, but, they're really closed minded about, and it's just like, we don't want to be completely harsh and unforgiving of other humans that are leaning in and making mistakes too. So I agree with you, Kate. I think we have a lot of thought partnering to do. And I think I think the concept of marriage and a relationship being such an important tenet of life
Mm-hmm.
as a goal in life. And so people are looking to fit into the mold of
Do
a
you think
partnership.
it is as much anymore? Women actually have a choice now about whether or not they want to be married. All of the reasons in my generation and before that, I know that my mother got married to get out of the house. I know
Mm-hmm.
so many women of her generation. By the time my generation came, uh, yes, people still wanted to get married, but I don't say nowadays, you can have a career. Again, you can have a child on your
I don't
own.
know. I mean, my
Financially, it's wonderful to have a partner, but you
I
don't
feel like
have.
most young girls to get out of their parents' house still do have to not marry a person directly, but
But young
it's
girls can get their own apartments. Years ago, we couldn't even get friggin' bank accounts. You
That's
can
right.
get
not
your
in New
own.
York City. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you can get your own
Yeah.
apartment. You have access to birth control, so you don't have to worry about being pregnant. You make your own money financially.
Mm-hmm.
Marriage to me should be the business arrangement that it should be. Because
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, I have women who are younger than I am in their 50s who did go to college, but agreed with their husbands that they would raise the children. And now their husband has left with a 25-year-old, and my friends have no pension, no social security, and
Mm-hmm.
financially they're poor.
Yeah.
So it's to me a business arrangement, and that's how it should be.
I
yeah,
completely agree with that. But I do think that like the amount of women that are aware of the choices they have definitely has increased. The amount of rights that we have that can actually go open a bank account, right, along so many different lines of accessibility of independence. There is, though, a full blown movement called trad wives, traditional
I
wives,
don't believe.
right?
I
It
don't get it. I don't believe it's as full blown. I think it's a drop in the bucket, and I think
well,
it's
I think our
a lot
current
of hype.
president speaks to how many women voted against their best
Just
interest in alignment with those values of,
Hmm.
subjugating themselves to their husbands or to their partners or just, aligning themselves with a man and thinking
Hmm.
that they
I
should
still
lead
think
us.
I think it's a very small percentage.
Okay, but enough to drive the way that affects us all on a daily basis, and I feel like um, there there's still work to do in letting women know you have options and you have the right to pursue your dreams, your
And you also
goals.
have the right to be a trad wife. One of the
that's right.
biggest
Right.
problems with
That's
the
right.
feminist movement was
Hmm.
it was the women that worked against the women who stayed
Right.
home and
That
raised
that is
children, right?
absolutely true.
That's
Yeah.
so that's not going to happen again. You want to be a trad wife, you
Yeah.
go and
Well,
do it.
people still kind of want to put down feminism by saying it's anti-man or
Oh, sure, because they
anti-child or
don't know what it
anti-right.
is.
And
Hmm.
It's just like
well,
years
yeah, but I
ago.
mean, at its best, it should be the freedom to choose, right?
Hmm.
So
It's
it should be the
also just
freedom to be the woman you
equality.
want to be. Yeah.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But I
Yeah,
think there is that
absolutely.
it's weaponized. That word is weaponized. Like when
But
Rush Limbaugh used to say
and
feminazi.
none of these women would have the rights they have if it weren't for the women that came before them.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't, and a lot of them voted so that we lost some in these past few years. Like in Georgia, we have a very strict abortion ban that reflexively took place once Roe was overturned, and so
I
you're
know.
just
I
like,
can't believe Roe was overturned. I can't believe you can use the word
mhm,
precedent, and then you
mhm,
overturn it. It makes me sick to my stomach.
Yeah.
mhm.
That was basically lying under oath.
And just to clarify, I know sometimes we have to, we're all familiar with certain terms, but the right to an abortion was not codified as a federal right. The Senate, Congress, they should have, in the 50 years since it was first um, went through the Supreme Court, should have fought for that so that it could not be overturned. So it was a decision that said women, yes, they do have the right, but it was not enshrined as an amendment to the Constitution that was our
Hmm.
right. And so a whole bunch of states set up these laws to go into effect the day that Roe could be overturned to say it is not a federal right. Then you see in Georgia a 6-week abortion ban, or in South Carolina a 6-week abortion ban, or in Florida
Hmm.
things like that, or heartbeat laws
Hmm.
that they instituted that have we have lost hundreds of women in their pursuit of getting medical care
I know.
around
Wow.
being pregnant.
Mhm.
A very famous case took place here in Georgia, where a woman was made to be on a respirator
I remember
until the
forced
baby
to give
came to
birth.
term, so that they could grab the baby. So the family was denied the right of
Hmm.
allowing the mother to perish
Hmm.
in mind and body at the same time, because her mind was
Hmm.
gone.
Hmm.
Her brain, she had
Goodness.
brain death, and they kept her
This
body
is
alive.
recent in the United States of
Yeah.
America.
Yes.
So there's a
Yes.
lot happening
Um,
that
There's a lot of women who are dying from sepsis and everything else because doctors won't treat them.
yeah, because
yes,
they're having ectopic pregnancies and the doctors are worried about having felony counts.
So,
absolutely.
Emily, before I get anxious and as we look at winding down here,
Hmm.
um, after you've seen progress, it sounds like you agree that things being named, being able to put a name to something, be able to denounce certain behaviors, being
Hmm.
able to see yourself as your own provider, and being able to choose
Hmm.
your own way, these are huge progress in your lifetime. Now, as you see what's happening today
Hmm.
with the breakdowns of things you thought maybe would never be
Hmm.
overturned or like regressed in this fashion, um, there are young organizers in the world that maybe feel that things are wrong and don't know how to step into the fight as you still are doing. Um, I guess my question is like, what do you say to folks who feel like this is too big or like, how do you think we can still lean in to fight and get back some of those rights when
You
it
know,
when it
there's this
feels like the world is blowing up,
right. There's this
like
saying,
what
but
can
I'm,
I do, my
but
little
I'm,
self in
yeah,
my little bucket of the world?
but I'm only one person. Said
Hmm.
1 million people.
Hmm.
That's it, one at a time.
Hmm.
Don't despair. Have hope. Know that
Hmm.
the pendulum is going to swing, back the other way. Be present. Spread kindness. I try to do all kinds of kind acts all the time. And I'm such a cynic, but I do it anyway. My favorite has been being part of Lasagna Love. You should all look it up. It's an
Okay.
organization that believes in spreading kindness through food so that you can
Oh,
sign up to be a chef, which I've done, and you're matched with someone who's signed up to want to receive a lasagna. So for the past 3 years, that's what I do every other week.
writing
And do you
down.
feel like those kindnesses add up to combat AI and war in Iran and like do you
Little at a
really feel
time.
like it makes a
I
difference?
keep all you can do. I keep my little corner of the world clean and neat and kind. That's all you can do. You can't do it on a global level, but if
Yes.
each person does it, it does become global.
Yeah.
What's the quote? You're not responsible for finishing the fight, nor are you free to abandon it. Something like
Yes.
that. Yeah. So there's always going to be forces working both ways for whatever you're concerned about, right? And
That's
so
right.
you have to give that opposition
Hmm.
in a productive way, in a kind way,
Yes,
in a
I
way
think
that
so.
leads others to be inspired and not hateful.
Yeah.
Well, Emily, as we both sit on the steering committee of the Brides March, and we're closing out, unless y'all ladies have other things to bring forth, I wonder if you could share with folks a little. Oh yeah, go ahead, cousin.
Oh, I just wanted, since we brought it up, this year, Denim Day is on April 29th.
29th. Yeah, that's what I have on my calendar. I think this is the rally. I think is going to be downtown somewhere.
Welcome to the Birthing People Matter comment. We see you out here. Thank you for joining us and supporting us. An amazing ally in this movement who's a man and supports birthing rights for women. I just saw a comment there. But I thought we could close out sharing one action you can take. You can save the date for this annual event that Emily and I organize every year called the New York City Brides March. We talked about it at our episode last time that it began because of the loss in my family of my aunt on her wedding day. But it is an awareness raising event. Emily, will you share a little bit about why people should come, or what they can expect if they join us, or even what you do in the Brides March?
The little video that I had made was talking about just being bold for the women who can't come out, and being seen by so many people when we go by. And the people, women especially, they know they're not alone. Yeah, maybe we make a spectacle of ourselves with our chants and our dresses, but it's for a good cause. We want to be seen. We want you to be seen. We want you to know that there are resources. You just have to seek them out.
It doesn't have to be a personal issue in your relationship, in your home. You can denounce it, and we can do that together.
Yes.
Well, I, between fixing my crown on the day of the march and making sure I have a veil, or
That's
like
my favorite
doing some breathing with me,
Yes.
or being courageous to kick off the program some years when we put you on the stage. I just want to thank you for existing, being a part of my life, and just showing up for every single thing, whether it's lasagna or the NuAunts second episode that you're on today. Um, Ladies, I'll let you close us out.
I thank you
Kelly
so
or
much.
Kate, do you want to do a little?
I think you did a wonderful closing comment for us on this second episode. Thank you so much, Emily, for your wisdom, for your work. This is exciting for us to share in this way. It was a wonderful discussion. So thank you all for being here.
Thanks
Thanks,
for joining
everybody.
us,
so
y'all. We'll
much.
see you soon on the next episode. Lots of love to you all.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.